What if I told you that one of the most controversial prophets in modern ministry is making a move that could shake the very foundation of one of the largest Black Pentecostal denominations in the world? Prophet Brian Carn, a man celebrated by some as anointed and criticized by others as manipulative, has just made a decision that's sending shockwaves through the gospel community. Whispers are turning into headlines. Reports suggest that Prophet Carn is walking away from the Church of God in Christ, better known as COGIC, to establish something entirely new. But is this truly a spiritual calling? Or the start of a quiet rebellion wrapped in divine language? Because what's unfolding right now isn't just about one man leaving a denomination. It's about a power struggle, a clash of beliefs, and a movement that could redefine what church leadership looks like in the modern age. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the real story, the rise, the conflict, and the fallout of Prophet Brian Carn's shocking breakaway from COGIC. And once you hear the full story, you might find yourself asking one haunting question. Is this truly a move of God? Or something much deeper? Before the headlines, before the social media debates, and long before the public even noticed, something had already started changing in Prophet Brian Carn's ministry. To understand what's happening now, you have to rewind a few years, back to when the first quiet cracks began to show between him and the traditional structure of the Church of God in Christ. Brian Carn wasn't just another preacher. He was the preacher that people couldn't stop talking about. From his teenage years, he was labeled as a prodigy. His prophetic accuracy, his emotional delivery, and his boldness on the pulpit made him a force the church hadn't seen in decades. People called him the young prophet, and wherever he went, the crowds followed. But as his fame grew, so did something else: his independence. While most COGIC leaders stayed aligned under the denomination's strict hierarchy, Carn started building something of his own. He launched independent conferences, gathered his own leadership teams, and started hosting massive revival events under a new banner, Kingdom City Church. At first, it seemed harmless. After all, many well-known pastors within COGIC have personal ministries that extend beyond the denomination. But with Carn, it felt different. His tone began to shift. His sermons became more about kingdom over denomination and calling over control. For longtime observers, it was clear Carn wasn't just expanding his reach. He was quietly redefining his identity. Insiders noticed subtle changes too: differences in doctrine, worship style, and most importantly, authority. In COGIC, leadership is built on accountability. But within Carn's growing movement, authority seemed to flow through him alone. His followers didn't just see him as a pastor. They saw him as the prophet, the direct voice of God. One sermon in particular sparked murmurs across church circles. He warned about the danger of being loyal to systems that have lost their oil. That one statement sent shockwaves. Many believed it was a coded jab at COGIC leadership, suggesting the denomination had become more political than spiritual. He never said he was leaving. Not directly, but his language began preparing his followers for something bigger, something that would later be described as a divine separation. By the time whispers started circulating that Carn was planning to lead a new church, the groundwork had already been laid. His followers saw it as obedience. His critics saw it as pride. And for COGIC leadership, it was a ticking clock, because what began as subtle independence was about to explode into open confrontation, and that's when the tension between calling and control reached its breaking point. Every major movement in the church eventually reaches a point where passion meets politics, and for Prophet Brian Carn, that collision was inevitable. What started as quiet independence soon evolved into something much deeper: a power struggle between a prophetic voice and a powerful institution. For years, COGIC leadership admired Carn's energy. They saw him as the next-generation bridge between old-school Pentecostal fire and modern digital influence. His revivals filled arenas. His live streams drew thousands. He had what the denomination needed: youth appeal, charisma, and boldness. But behind the admiration, unease was growing. According to several insiders, tension began when Carn's ministry started operating completely outside the COGIC chain of command. He created his own boards, opened international branches, and developed schools of prophecy, all under his own name. And while that might sound harmless, it posed a serious question. Who was Carn truly accountable to? When a preacher's name begins to shine brighter than the denomination that raised them, the system starts to tremble. Soon, behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. Some bishops allegedly expressed concern that Carn's growing influence was overshadowing longtime church elders who had served for decades. One insider described it bluntly. When people talked about revival, they didn't mention the church. They mentioned Brian Carn. And in a denomination built on hierarchy and order, that's dangerous ground. Then came the rumors, quiet but persistent. Talk of disagreements over finances, ministry control, and public image began spreading among church circles. Nothing confirmed, but enough to ignite speculation. Some claimed Carn was warned to come back into order. Others said he was accused of moving too independently, too fast, too loud. Carn, however, didn't take the bait. He didn't attack publicly. Instead, he did what prophets often do. He preached around it. In one fiery sermon, he declared, "Some leaders care more about control than calling." To his audience, it was truth. To his critics, it was rebellion in disguise. But one thing was certain. The message was personal. From that moment, the tone changed. Invitations to certain COGIC events stopped coming. Relationships that once felt like family began to cool. Private meetings turned into public distance. And yet, Carn stayed calm, never naming names, never openly breaking rank. But his sermons said everything his lips didn't. He spoke of being misunderstood, of being called to build beyond systems, and of how real prophets are often rejected by the institutions they bless. His words resonated deeply with those who felt trapped by tradition, especially young believers who were weary of church politics. And as his following grew stronger, the denomination's grip grew weaker, because by now, Prophet Brian Carn wasn't just a preacher within COGIC. He had become something far more powerful, a movement all his own. But that rise in influence came at a cost. Behind the applause and livestream views was a growing rift, one that would soon push Carn to make a decision that could never be undone. And that breaking point, according to those close to him, began with something no one expected: public humiliation. Every major shift in a leader's life begins with one moment, the moment when silence breaks and decision becomes destiny. For Prophet Brian Carn, that moment came quietly, but its effects would ripple through the church world like an earthquake. Behind the scenes, insiders say tension between Carn and COGIC leadership had reached its limit. Meetings had been held. Discussions were had. Bishops and senior pastors reportedly urged him to return under covering to bring his ministry, Kingdom City, fully back under official church authority. But Carn's answer was short, firm, and final: "You can't control a calling that didn't come from you." That single statement, simple yet defiant, ended what many described as the last chance for reconciliation. After that, the unspoken separation began. The invitation stopped. His name was quietly removed from a major national event lineup. For many, that was the public signal that something was broken beyond repair. Those close to Carn described that period as both painful and freeing. Painful because the system he once loved had turned its back on him. Freeing because he could finally move according to conviction, not permission. And from that moment forward, his messages changed tone. Gone were the carefully worded sermons meant to please everyone. Instead, his preaching grew raw, direct, and fiery. He spoke about religious systems that kill creativity and prophets who are punished for not bowing to politics. One sermon went viral after he declared, "The modern church doesn't want prophets, it wants puppets." The crowd roared. Social media exploded. Supporters called it truth. Critics called it rebellion. But one thing was clear: Prophet Brian Carn was done playing by the rules. When the official announcement dropped that Prophet Carn was launching an independent church, the news didn't just spread, it erupted. Flyers, live streams, and sermon clips flooded the internet within hours. The name Kingdom City became a viral phrase across the gospel community. According to Carn, this wasn't just another congregation. It was a movement, a place where believers could experience God without limits, without hierarchy, without the weight of politics. He described it as a hub for revival and restoration, not religion. The launch service was everything you'd expect from Brian Carn and more. Packed pews, people weeping, shouting, kneeling in worship. The atmosphere was charged. His message that day, obeying God when it costs you everything, wasn't just a sermon. It was a declaration of war against fear and conformity. He compared himself to Abraham, Elijah, and even Jesus, all men who left the familiar to follow a divine call. But as the crowds grew, so did the criticism. Some COGIC leaders accused him of pride, saying he was using the denomination's platform to build his own empire. Others claimed his new ministry lacked accountability. One pastor even remarked, "A prophet without covering is a ship without anchor." Still, Carn didn't respond. He didn't argue. Instead, he built. Within months, Kingdom City began spreading beyond its home base. New locations opened in multiple states. Online streams tripled in viewership. Millennials and Gen Z Christians flocked to his movement, many saying they were tired of church politics and hungry for power and authenticity. Carn's messages became rallying cries. You can't build God's kingdom while bowing to man's structure. Tradition will never birth transformation. These quotes flooded social media. Whether people loved him or hated him, they couldn't ignore him. But as Kingdom City grew louder, opposition grew stronger. Some veteran church leaders warned that independence without accountability could lead to spiritual chaos. Others accused Carn of creating a cult of personality, where followers idolized the man more than the message. Meanwhile, Carn's supporters argued that he was simply doing what many pastors were afraid to do: follow God, no matter the cost. To them, he was a modern reformer, breaking chains of outdated systems and giving voice to a new generation of believers. One viral comment from a supporter summed it up. He's not rebelling. He's reforming. Still, questions remained. Was this truly a divine calling or the result of years of pride, conflict, and wounded ego? Even those close to Carn admitted that the line between obedience and defiance had grown blurry. COGIC never issued a public statement, choosing silence over confrontation. But their absence spoke volumes. For a denomination rooted in unity and order, Prophet Carn's exit symbolized something bigger, the beginning of a new era where charismatic leaders no longer wait for permission to lead. Today, Prophet Brian Carn stands at a crossroads. Kingdom City continues to grow, and his name still draws headlines. To his followers, he's proof that obedience to God is worth any cost. To his critics, he's a warning, a talented man who let independence become isolation. But whether you see him as a hero or a rebel, one thing is undeniable. Brian Carn has changed the conversation. He has exposed the growing tension between institutional religion and personal revelation, a battle that's far from over. Because beneath all the noise, one question still echoes across pews, pulpits, and comment sections. When does obedience to God's call become disobedience to God's order? That question isn't just for Brian Carn. It's for every believer watching the rise of Kingdom City and wondering what happens when conviction challenges tradition. And if history has taught us anything, it's this: every reformation starts with a rebel. Whether this is revival or rebellion, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure: Prophet Brian Carn's story has just begun.